Grief is not something that we get over. It's something that we learn how to move with. Millennials and Gen Z are creating the new codes to navigating grief. And here's 3 ways that you can too. What's up, y'all? Welcome to Make the Way, the culture podcast where we decode culture in real time. I am your cultural guide and guard, Mike Fair. I'm excited to tap in with you for another episode of Make the Way. So let's jump in. This week, we're going to be talking about a subject that I've wrestled with personally a lot, actually, in the past several years. And that's the topic of grief. I've had my own personal journey with loss and death, and also just navigating grief in the reality of life and moving through the world. And it's a topic that I've been a little bit afraid to dive into, but it's something that I know many individuals are wrestling with. I have spent time thinking about new ways of grieving for myself, and it led me to unpack really how millennials, my generation, and Gen Z, how we're doing grief differently than other generations. And it led me to just want to share some of what I've been learning, not only about the ways that Mil Z is navigating grief, but also my own journey with grief and how I'm moving through and with it differently at this phase. So this is a heavy subject. I want to encourage you to check in with yourself, create space for yourself to go through these themes. I don't exactly know how I'm react to talking about this, so I ask for your grace as I navigate a subject that's sensitive for me, but something that I definitely wanted to share at this stage. Before we get going, I have to remind you, you must subscribe to Make the Way. We are doing some awesome things with the content. I see the community growing. I'm blown away every day with the new subscribers on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio and Spotify and all the different places that you can listen to and engage with Make the Way. So hit that subscribe button, tap in with us, let me know where you're from. And let's stay connected on all the themes of decoding culture. So let's jump into the topic this week. We're going to unpack the 3 ways that millennials and Gen Z are navigating grief differently. And I'll also share a little bit of my own journey with grief and how I'm navigating it. The 3 Mil Z codes that we'll unpack on the new ways of navigating grief are share it, explore it, and getting over is a trap. We move with it. So let's dive in. So in true Make the Way fashion, I always like to start with research, analysis, the data behind the subject. And it goes without saying that grief is a layered and nuanced conversation when we talk about millennials and Gen Z. We all know that millennials and Gen Z really reporting feelings of navigating anxiety and depression, to the tune of 75% of Gen Z reporting feelings of anxiety and depression on a regular basis. We know this holds true when we look at millennials in particular. A 2025 study from Statista reports that millennials experience higher rates of anxiety, depression, and stress compared to previous generations. Millennials are twice as likely to report poor mental health status compared to the boomer generation. And the American Psychological Association states that Gen Z individuals are more likely to report mental health concerns, including depression and anxiety, than previous generations. Gen Z adults acknowledge that 1 in 4 are having more bad days than good within a 1-month time frame, and 2 out of 5 have a diagnosed mental health condition. So this is a stark reality. And really impacts how we walk into this conversation of grief. I think for millennials and Gen Z, based on the realities of culture, the things that they've experienced, not only a global pandemic, but a mental health epidemic, as we just touched on, there is this collective experience with loss, with disappointment. And it's not just navigating grief at a personal level, it is a collective shared experience based on some of the, to be honest, harsh realities of the time period that millennials and Gen Z have come of age. Millennials and Gen Z are navigating instability with our economy, with I won't even go into the actions of our government right now, but daily being faced with, the phrase unprecedented events, that is the reality of the Millennial and Gen Z experience. And so that coupled with living through a global pandemic, facing the loss of parents to death, loss of loved ones, all of this is adding to a larger societal instability that millennials and Gen Z are wrestling with on a day-to-day basis. So I want to be clear, the realities of what millennial and Gen Z are facing with grief, it's not something that we can solve in a podcast. These three codes aren't necessarily a solution. They are a way to navigate. Grief isn't something that we're trying to fix. It is something that we'll all face if we are blessed enough to continue living. And it is about how we leverage grief. It's about how we move through and with grief and still have the lives that we want, still be able to create and accomplish and experience what we want in this world. So that's the purpose of today. This is not a one size fits all guru fixer kind of post or content. This is truly about offering some tangible codes that I have leveraged, that I know many are leveraging, and really partnering together in how we move with and through grief. So the first code that millennials and Gen Z are using to navigate grief is this idea of share it. It goes without saying that millennials and Gen Z have come up in a digital first native social experience through the power of social media, through the power of content platforms like YouTube, and just the digitalization, if that's a word, of culture. um, there are platforms and spaces where people have been able to share their experience with grief in new and profound ways. It's through the social media accounts, it's through the group chats, it's through the voice notes, it's through the Reddit posts where we're seeing people kind of lift the veil on grief, and sharing in new modes than previous generations. And that really speaks to a powerful human insight behind this code of sharing your grief. Grief requires a voice. It requires witness. It isn't something that is solved in the darkness, something that we understand in isolation. There's power in the collective, connected experience around grief. There are things that I can learn from you about your experience. There's things that you can take away from my experience with grief. And so when we share it, we unlock the potential of identifying codes, identifying systems, identifying opportunities to connect with ourselves and connect with others through shared grief. I think personally, I learned this in the loss of my parents. I lost my father in 2020. I lost my mother last year in 2025. And I think initially I felt like this pressure, especially when my dad passed away, to kind of just navigate it on my own and, initially kind of show up as strong and, not be emotional or show that I was wrestling with a lot. And I think that took a toll on me. And I vowed as I navigate grief moving forward, and especially in this season of grieving my mother, I've learned that there is so much power in me being transparent. The things that I can learn from others about their own relationship or journey with grief, my ability to release, my ability to not hold everything so, things that are so heavy, that comes through the power of sharing my journey, sharing my experience with grief. And so I know that this is hard to do at times, but I think it's important to find what feels comfortable for you, who feels like a safe space. And that might not be someone that you know. That might not be your family members or super close friends. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a support group, maybe it's a Reddit thread, it might come in surprising ways, but there's so much power in sharing our experience and allowing people to offer empathy, advice, or just be a listening ear. The second code is to explore it. And I think this is something that feels a bit counterintuitive. It may feel difficult in application, but it is a powerful element of the grieving process and navigating grief. It's this commitment to actually explore the emotions and the questions that grief presents. Millennials and Gen Z are doing this not only through a more open and transparent sharing of their grief, but actually using their grief as a prompt to have new experiences, to explore different places, whether this looks like leaning into travel, leaning into learning, taking on new rituals, leaning into creativity. All of these are ways that we don't just sit with our grief. It's not just a blanket experience of sadness. It can be a prompt to do things differently, a prompt to experience life actually in new ways. So the exploration of grief doesn't land as just being a distraction from grief or avoiding it. It is actually giving grief somewhere to go. So I will say personally, this is another way that I've been navigating grief in a new way this time around. I think with my mom losing her and she was sick for quite some time, I was navigating grief, through her illness, and I leaned into creative pursuits, during that time. I've been doing a lot of writing that I'll be sharing more at some point about that process and that output. But I really leaned into my writing, and the beautiful thing about that is it actually provided connection with my mom. Well, she was an educator and someone who loved language and, creative arts and all that. And during that experience, is one of the cherished memories that I have with her towards the end of her life. And I know that if I hadn't had the thought process of, I'm going to lean into new things, I'm going to use my creative energy as an outlet in my navigation of grief, I wouldn't have landed on that. And this video podcast recording that you're listening to right this second is actually a result of my commitment to using creativity and learning and new ventures and experiences as a way to actually navigate my grief. So I appreciate you even being a part of this experience for me. And our third code is getting over is a trap we move with grief. I think this is probably the most significant code within this playbook around navigating grief in new ways. And this is deeply tied to the emotional experience of grieving. And this is whether you're grieving the loss of a loved one, whether you're grieving the loss of a relationship, whether that's romantic, friendship, work. We grieve in so many ways, whether that's the grief around an ambition or a dream that you have for yourself. And I think sometimes we feel like the journey with grief is about moving on, kind of getting over or kind of putting things behind us. And I'm here to tell you that's not real. When we experience a loss, a deep loss, you live with that. It's a part of you. It is connected to how you feel about yourself, about how you relate to others. And that doesn't just go away. And so I think I personally have leaned into this idea of moving with my grief through the rest of my life. I'll never move on from living life without my parents. I'll never move on from not being able to call them on the phone or go hang out at their house or spend time with them. But I can move forward knowing that the love that we experienced is still with me. And I can carry that through everything, through every experience that's ahead for me. And I keep that same energy when I'm grieving things, whether that's a relationship, whether that's an ambition I have for myself. I move forward with the reality of that loss. But it's not about trying to forget about it. It's not about trying to remove it from my experience. It's truly unpacking, what can I learn from that? How do I actually feel about that? And what do I want to do with those feelings as I move forward in life? So I think this is it's huge in terms of this evolution of how millennials and Gen Z relate to grief versus previous generations. This idea of not erasing the experience, not trying to diminish what grief means by putting it in a box and hiding it from the world. I think this is a forward moving and forward thinking philosophy around integrating grief into our lives, being transparent and vulnerable about what we're grieving and trying to process it, experience it, use it as a prompt so we can get to the lives that we want, so we can get to the experiences that we desire despite grieving. So I know this was a heavier subject matter, but I really appreciate you connecting with me around this. I am someone who is actively grieving, still navigating how to move forward, how to move with the grief that I've experienced related to my parents, but in other areas and aspects of my life. And so I want to hear from you. How are you moving with grief? How are you navigating? What are the systems and codes and frameworks that you're leveraging to have a better relationship with grief and move forward towards the experiences that you want out of life? So hit me up in the comments, share this episode, share it with someone that you know is grieving or someone that could benefit from this. I appreciate every single listener, YouTube watcher, all of the individuals who are connecting with Make the Way. And I'm looking forward to all the different ways that we're going to decode culture. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay connected to Make the Way and follow me at Mike Austin Makes on Instagram, TikTok, and of course on YouTube as well. Thank you for being a part of a conversation that, while not an easy topic to navigate, a very important opportunity for us to learn and grow together. So appreciate you checking out Make the Way. Peace, y'all.